More thoughts about the international student ban that just came out yesterday. My last video was about how he's really targeting Asian immigration to this country because higher education is how so many of us get here, and his fan base really doesn't want us here. Like, they don't like Asian Americans, they don't like Asians, they want to send them all back. We've known about this, except for their Asian fetish. Who else is coming into this country through the higher education system?
Breaking news. This was just released 30 minutes ago by the State Department. New visa policies specifically restricting Chinese students, Chinese citizens, their ability to get visas to the United States. These regulations are targeting Chinese students and Chinese citizens with links to the Communist Party, number one. Number two, any students that are studying in the STEM professions, tech, math, science, are being targeted.
It never ends, you guys. On May 28, 2025, Marco Rubio announced that the United States will begin revoking visas for Chinese students, particularly those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party or studying in critical fields, which is extremely broad, you guys.
If you are an international student dreaming of studying in the US and landing on that six-figure job after graduation, let's talk reality. Because according to Chinese Ministry of Education, over 80% of Chinese international students end up flying back home after graduation. Why? Because landing a job here in the US is like finding a needle in a haystack.
Sure, you guys have seen that video of the guy from Hong Kong saying that Hong Kong is willing to take any international students from the US that feel unwelcomed, persecuted, unsafe, which is honestly all of them thanks to this president.
Welcome back to the channel. Today's topic is a pretty heavy one that cuts deep into international politics, higher education, economics, and the future of thousands of young people. We're diving into how the US is aggressively revoking Chinese student visas and what that really means for the students, for American universities, and for the economy at large. There's a storm brewing at the intersection of immigration policy and global trade, and it's time we talk about it.
The U.S. is escalating its crackdown on Chinese student visas. On May 28, 2025, Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced that the U.S. will begin aggressively revoking visas for Chinese students, particularly those affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party or studying in sensitive fields like artificial intelligence or quantum computing. This move is part of a broader initiative to scrutinize U.S.-China academic ties due to national security concerns. The State Department has also paused all new student visa interviews to implement enhanced social media vetting procedures. This development has caused significant uncertainty among international students, especially at institutions like Harvard University, where students are concerned about their future in the U.S. China has condemned the U.S. policy, calling it discriminatory and damaging to cultural exchange. This situation remains fluid, with legal challenges expected and universities bracing for the impact on their international student populations.
All right, guys, yesterday, May 29th, Department of State spokesperson Tammy Bruce held a press briefing. And in the beginning of the press briefing, she spoke about the international student visa situation. And here is what you need to know. Number one, earlier this week, the U.S. Department of State came out with a statement they were going to aggressively go after international students from China. There's going to be a lot more scrutiny. Now, this is all tied to the fact that they're saying that there's some students that have strong ties to the CCP, there's intellectual theft and all of these things that are going on. So they want to protect themselves. So they're putting all of this attention right now on China. So as an international student from China, that's tough, but they are going to apparently revoke visas. More details about it will come through. So I'll keep an eye on that. If you're an international student from China, hang in there. Number two, she did acknowledge, yes, that new student visa appointments are on hold. They're working through that. She didn't give a timeline, but she's felt confident that it's going to be soon. In fact, I think there was something to the effect of where we want to match as many student visas as we did last year. So I do think that we should see soon the appointments coming back online for new student visas. So if you already have an existing student visa appointment, don't panic. So we understand that part of this pause is the implementation of new security and vetting systems. And part of it, I think, as we all know, social media is going to become a very big part of that vetting process. I think they're going to involve more checks and balances. Essentially, they were saying that even the vetting and security process is not going to stop after the visa has been issued. So just expect a lot more scrutiny as an international student. And finally, someone asked about the Harvard case. She punted it. It wasn't addressed, but as you may know, there's a declaration to stop Harvard from issuing I-20s. Then I think yesterday there was a court order. So that is an ongoing battle. But there was a comment that was made. Yes, even elite schools are under review. Visas tied to Harvard, not just students, but professors and researchers are reportedly being assessed. Overall, there wasn't a ton of new information. It just kind of confirmed some of the things that we already knew. So really is now we just keep waiting. It's been an interesting year so far, guys. So hang in there. We'll get through this.
In recent months, the United States has been taking a notably aggressive stance against Chinese nationals holding student visas. Former President Donald Trump's administration, with support from key Republicans like Senator Marco Rubio, has spearheaded this movement. On a Wednesday press conference, Secretary of State Marco Rubio declared that the U.S. would aggressively revoke the visas of Chinese students. This statement marked a dramatic escalation in a policy that had been quietly growing behind the scenes. The move is not just about visa revocation. It's about redefining who is welcome in America. This decision fits into a broader immigration strategy that the Trump administration has consistently pursued, tightening borders, limiting entry, and casting suspicion on foreign nationals, especially those from China. The Department of Homeland Security, working hand in hand with the State Department, is ramping up its efforts to review, suspend, and even cancel existing student visas held by Chinese nationals. Thousands of students now face sudden uncertainty about their legal status, their academic futures, and their professional dreams.
Breaking news. This was just released 30 minutes ago by the State Department. New visa policies specifically restricting Chinese students, Chinese citizens, their ability to get visas to the United States. These regulations are targeting Chinese students and Chinese citizens with links to the Communist Party. Number one. Number two, any students that are studying in the STEM professions, tech, math, science, are being targeted. They're going to be working with DHS to revoke visas, tighten policies of Chinese nationals coming into the United States or those that are already here. All future visa appointments from China and Hong Kong are going to face very strict vetting rules. America first, this policy is aimed to prioritize the United States and its interests. Once we know more, I'll update you, but if you're from China and you're in the United States, specifically on a student visa, you might be losing that status.
It never ends, you guys. On May 28, 2025, Marco Rubio announced that the United States will begin revoking visas for Chinese students, particularly those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party or studying in critical fields, which is extremely broad, you guys. The administration has also just halted new visa interviews and plans to intensify vetting of applicants' social media activity. Now, approximately 277,000 Chinese students are currently studying in the United States, making them the second largest group of international students. This policy shift has raised alarms among universities and advocacy groups, warning of diminished international academic exchange and economic impacts as foreign students often pay full tuition.
Hello, me again. Late night thoughts, because, I have 3 kids and my husband fell asleep, and so this is when I can make content easily after everyone's sleeping. But last night I talked about my concerns with Health and Human Services, and tonight I want to talk about concerns with immigration stuff. So there was breaking news this evening that Marco Rubio came out and said that we would be aggressively revoking visas of students from China. So they said in the article that they were targeting people who had connections to the Communist Party. And then also it said that they would be looking at students who were in critical fields, but it didn't define what those meant. The Times was thinking that they meant people in the physical science kind of world. It's just very concerning. This administration has pushed a lot of anti-Asian rhetoric. For those that don't know, I'm married to a man who is part Chinese. So this really makes me mad. My father-in-law came to the United States from China back in 70s. He came here for college and he met my mother-in-law And, you know, they got married. He is a citizen now. He's actually a pastor. He went to like seminary school, and he, you know, is a pastor for some international populations, but also just like, you know, like standard evangelical, whatever, non-denominational churchgoers too. And it's just very frustrating to hear that this administration is just continuing to push this like anti-Asian, anti-Chinese rhetoric again. A lot of times people in this administration like to push, you know, information or misinformation, whatever, that, you know, Chinese people, they think that people from China are all spies. It's completely garbage. Like, there's so many smart, well-intentioned people that want to come from China to the United States to study and to potentially stay here and have a better life. You know, it's sad to me that this is where we are, but I guess I can't say that I'm surprised. So we will see what happens with that. It's just very frustrating. Like I said, for personal reasons, it hits me a little bit harder, but also like this kind of thing will impact our healthcare field. I don't know the exact numbers, but we do have a lot of people that come from China to come to the US for medical school, or, you know, to do like a PhD program where they are studying like science that is important for like cancer research or other, you know, treating other diseases. We're going to miss out on some really intelligent, incredible people from this. And I just think it's really wrong. So, I don't know. Hopefully, I don't know if the courts can fight back in some way here, but I'm just very sick of this administration being anti-Chinese, anti-Asian. You know, some people just want to come here to study and to have a better life. Not everyone is a spy or like a bad person. So keep that in mind. You know, if you have friends out there who are Chinese or just like, you know, Asian, Pacific Islander in general, just think about them, because I know when the Trump administration was in charge the first time, there was a lot of triggering things that happened for those people. And it does feel, with this news coming out again, it kind of feels like it's going down that path again. So I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments, but it's just really disappointing and dumb. Like like I said, we're going to miss out on some really intelligent people that could help make, you know, healthcare better here, help make science, you know, research in general better here. And we're not going to have those people. So, all right, have a good night.
Unsurprisingly, China has not taken these developments lightly. The Chinese Foreign Ministry issued a strong response, vowing to firmly safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of its students abroad. The move, according to Chinese officials, is politically motivated and discriminatory. In the backdrop of these visa revocations is a tense diplomatic landscape already frayed by the ongoing US-China trade war, technology bans, and disputes over Taiwan, cybersecurity, and intellectual property. While Washington and Beijing attempt to hammer out the details of a paused but unresolved trade deal, policies like these complicate negotiations. China's Ministry of Education has also warned students about the risks of studying in the US, and alternative destinations like Canada, Australia, and European countries are being actively promoted to young Chinese scholars. The revocation of Harvard University's authority to enroll international students, many of whom are Chinese, was particularly jarring. The diplomatic message here is clear. Education has now become a battleground in this broader geopolitical struggle.
So U.S. halts student visa appointments and plans expanding social media vetting, meaning that the embassies aren't taking no more students, interviews, or issuing visas for students to come study in America. And also, the students that are in America are going to get kicked out. Trump is kicking out, scaring off foreign students. Now, China is cashing in on it real quick. You know, China did not let the opportunity pass by. They're grabbing it quick. Maybe that's why they are so successful in such a short time. America, once you lose these foreign students, that's talent. That's talent that's going to go from America to China. Do you think we can afford that right now? After all that, we're saying, oh, China's doing this, China's doing that. But we're actually putting it on the plate for China. We're putting it on the plate for them and on a golden pedestal. And we're like, here you go, China. Here's all the talent. Take it. China's like, all the students that are getting rejected by America are more than welcome to come study in Hong Kong. Hong Kong targets top talent as Harvard faces international student ban. Hong Kong has called on the city universities to open their doors to those affected by Donald Trump's attempt ban on foreign students. The revenue alone that foreign students bring into America is in the trillions, not billions, trillions. And that's minusing the fees of the professors, the colleges, the universities, the books, the financial aid, and all the funds that go around with it. If that happens, how will these top-notch universities send billions of dollars to Israel? How? How are you going to do that? Huh, Trump? Did you think about all that? We need to wake up.
Wow, they did it. The president has officially revoked Harvard's ability to enroll international students. And existing foreign or international students would need to transfer schools or lose their legal status. This is huge. As someone who went to Harvard, I can tell you firsthand that international students make up a significant portion of the student body and are a vital part of campus life. Around 6,800 international students attended Harvard University this year, which is around 27% of the student body. I had a lot of friends and classmates who were international, and this order banning them doesn't just affect students from Europe or the East. This also includes places like Canada and Mexico. It's everyone. I'm going to read to you the letter that the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, sent to Harvard, because it's truly so shocking you have to hear it for yourself. It reads, I am writing to inform you that effective immediately, Harvard University's Student and Exchange Visitor Program certification is revoked. As I explained to you in my April letter, it is a privilege to enroll foreign students. And it is also a privilege to employ aliens on campus. All universities must comply with the Department of Homeland Security's requirements, including reporting requirements under the Student and Exchange Visitor Program regulations. As a result of your refusal to comply with multiple requests to provide the Department of Homeland Security pertinent information while perpetuating an unsafe campus environment that is hostile and employs racist, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, you have lost this privilege. Consequences must follow to send a clear signal to Harvard and all universities that want to enjoy the privilege of enrolling foreign students, that DJT's administration will enforce the law and root out the evils of anti-Americanism. Now, here's a list of some of the demands that they want. One of the asks includes any and all video or audio footage in the possession of Harvard University of any protest activity involving a non-immigrant student on a Harvard University campus in the last 5 years. They want all disciplinary records, any complaints, electronic evidence on every international student. And Harvard basically said, no, that's not happening. So here we are. I'm sure Harvard's lawyers are already planning to take legal action to sue and challenge the order in court. Because if we've learned anything about Harvard so far, is that they're not just going to stand by and let DJT bully them.
Let's talk numbers. As of 2023, there were over 289,000 Chinese students enrolled in U.S. universities, making up about 25% of all international students. That's 1 in every 4 foreign students. Institutions like the University of Southern California, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, Purdue University, Columbia, NYU, and of course Harvard, host thousands of these students annually. They often pursue degrees in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and they're generally among the top-performing and highest-paying international students. Chinese students aren't just numbers on an enrollment chart. They are lab assistants, coding wizards, startup founders, and medical researchers. They publish in scientific journals, in turn at tech giants, and even start companies in Silicon Valley. Revoking their visas means pulling the plug on hundreds of innovation pipelines and disrupting research across dozens of universities. And it's not just academic loss. It's personal devastation for many of these students who have spent years planning, preparing, and saving for an American education.
I'm sure you guys have seen that video of the guy from Hong Kong saying that Hong Kong is willing to take any international students from the US that feel unwelcomed, persecuted, unsafe, which is honestly all of them thanks to this president. We have over 1 million international students studying in the US right now. Literally smartest fucking kids in the room. You want to get an A on your group project? Go find the Chinese guy. You want to get a good study partner so that you can get an A in math? Go find the Indian guy in your class. And the president's big plan is to ban them from Harvard and send their scholarships off to some welding school in Nebraska. And while I love the idea of sending money to trade schools, I think it's important. You cannot do it at the cost of our innovation, okay? Maybe if he wasn't building a giant fucking gold dome, he could invest in all of the trade schools in America. Something like 50 to 60% of the graduate students in STEM degrees right now in the US are international. You guys like your phone? Thank them. You guys like going and getting an MRI? Thank them. You guys like that TikTok filter that gives you abs? That was probably an international student on an F1 visa. Now Hong Kong is like, hey, if the US is being weird, come on over. And if I was a student, I'd be on the first fucking flight. Guys, they have free housing. It's an international hub, and they got bomb-ass dumplings. China isn't stealing our future. We are handing it over to them on a silver platter, all because Barron couldn't get into fucking Harvard. At this point, they just need to make t-shirts for the people on the right that say, make China great again, because that's all this president is doing, and you guys are enabling him.
If you are an international student dreaming of studying in the US and landing on that six-figure job after graduation, let's talk reality. Because according to Chinese Ministry of Education, over 80% of Chinese international students end up flying back home after graduation. Why? Because landing a job here in the US is like finding a needle in a haystack. Most companies don't want the hustle of sponsorship, which means they don't want to help you get a work visa. And without a work visa, there's no job. And if you're lucky enough to land on a job, you're usually on something called OPT, stands for Optional Practical Training, which allows you to work temporarily in the States, up to 3 years if you're in the STEM field. What happens after that? You're in this process called H-1B lottery, which literally means your future depends more on your luck than anything else. And every year, more people apply than there are spots. And what if you won the lottery? Well, congratulations, but now you're stuck in the green card wait list. And for Chinese nationals, that means waiting an additional 10 more years to get permanent residency. And if you lose your job anywhere along this process, well, you got 60 days to move out of this country. Yep, so gotta book your one-way ticket back home. So is it worth all the hustle? Well, for some, maybe. But for many, this American dream comes with a steep price tag.
Now let's talk money because the financial stakes are huge. According to the U.S. Department of Commerce, international students, led by China and India, contributed over $50 billion to the U.S. economy in 2023. Chinese students alone account for an estimated $15 billion to $20 billion in annual revenue. This includes tuition, housing, food, transportation, and consumer spending. Universities rely heavily on the full tuition paid by international students to fund scholarships, research programs, and even faculty salaries. If Chinese students are systematically pushed out of the U.S., universities will face budget shortfalls that could affect American students too. Public universities, especially those in states like California, Texas, and New York, will be hardest hit. This loss of revenue could mean program cuts, staff layoffs, and less financial aid for domestic students. So yes, this policy doesn't just hurt Chinese nationals, it's going to impact a lot of Americans as well.
I don't know if you heard the news, but US basically canceled a bunch of Chinese student visa. And at surface, you're like, oh, what's the big deal? It's actually huge. Let me explain why. I know why US want to cancel, because it's some government official be like, oh, the Chinese students are coming here studying and taking advantage of our school system, and then go back to China and copy our ideas and blah, blah, blah. That's just the blunt kind of lack of understanding of how technology and how society really works. Why it's important to not think that way is because literally, if you look at the top professors, scientists that are living in US, you look at the credential, how they became who they are, almost all of them are from China. It's crazy. Like that one guy, look him up. He is literally the only guy, well, he's the one who invented it. He figured out how evolution works and he's changing our DNA. Yeah, it's nuts. Like he's studying at, I forget, one of the fancy schools in the US. There's another guy, they actually just like, I don't know, they fired him recently. He single-handedly is basically protecting all of us from like data privacy and security threats. Again, another Chinese American professor. I'm just giving you an example because not just Chinese people, but like everyone comes to US to learn, to have this opportunity to advance in technology for all of us, society. And they live here in US because they want to raise their kids here. And they feel safe. They feel like US has taken care of them. So they raise their family. Their kids are going to school here and their grandkids are going to school here. But when you block that access, you disconnect the world. It's a huge disruption, not to just US and China, but the whole world. So anyways, it's a terrible news and I hope they revert it back.
More thoughts about the international student ban that just came out yesterday. My last video was about how he's really targeting Asian immigration to this country because higher education is how so many of us get here, and his fan base really doesn't want us here. Like, they don't like Asian Americans, they don't like Asians, they want to send them all back. We've known about this, except for their Asian fetish. Who else is coming into this country through the higher education system? I teach graduate students at Harvard, and I see a lot of also Europeans from, compared to us, leftist democracies. A lot of Western Europeans. These people come from places where there is free universal healthcare, where a lot of education is free, but they still come to the US because of its really great reputation for higher education. A lot of them grew up with like really nice trains, and they come to the US and they're like, where the heck are your social services? And they're pretty loud about this. I don't know, have you ever talked to a European? And like, no, I love this. I love them, you know, trying to alert Americans to the fact that we don't have any social services, especially given the amount of taxes that we pay, and for making us aware of the standard of living that they had back over there. This is not a group that a political party that is trying to take away all of our social services wants in this country. Like, they might be white, but they're also trying to raise the standards here, and they are not on board with a lot of fashy dictatorship stuff that's happening. All right, who else is coming over here? Let me remind you that undergrad and a lot of grad degree programs that require tuition actually charge foreign students more than domestic US students, and a lot of their tuition ends up subsidizing the US students who end up needing financial aid. So we are getting rich foreigners at these universities. A lot of international students from basically any continent. They're some of the best and brightest, but they also grew up with a lot of money. For PhD students, it's a little bit different because if you have a lot of money, like, why the heck would you do a PhD? Why would you do that to yourself? I'll get to them in a second. So we're getting foreigners with money at our universities. These students are graduating, their parents are joining the boards. Through donations, because their child is a student there, these parents are starting to actually have influence in the running of a lot of US institutions of higher learning. I walk around Harvard and I see all of these buildings that have the names of they have these wonderful ethnic names on the buildings because that person donated a shit ton of money. So yeah, there's quite a lot of wealthy foreigners, and most of them are people of color, given that they're coming from places like Asia, Middle East, Africa, and they're starting to have influence over some of the greatest institutions of higher learning in this country. Again, I have no problem with that. In order for a place like Harvard's reach to be truly global, we need to have contributions from everybody. And now I'm going to talk about some of the PhD students that get here. PhD admissions are based solely on your potential to do breakthrough research in science or the humanities or whatever. And these programs don't require tuition. They actually pay you a stipend to come here. So money and socioeconomic status is a lot less of a concern for PhD students. A lot more PhD students are middle or lower class compared to some other graduate degree programs that actually require tuition. So the final group that we're getting is foreign geniuses. Like, I'm actually friends with this dude who, when he was 17, won an international science competition in such a grandiose and beautiful way that the ISU named an asteroid after him. This person has also been cited in his research about 700 times and has been offered multiple professorships in his home country, but instead he's decided to stay in the US and work on climate tech instead of going back. And these people, most of them are doing it in their second language, which is English. These literal geniuses are working on like cancer, they're playing with telescopes, discovering new galaxies, they're out figuring out how the brain works, and they're all doing so for very little money because they're only here to improve themselves in the world. And these people are just a threat to white supremacy and the American superiority complex. Even in a place as liberal as Cambridge, Massachusetts, I have seen people like that guy who got an asteroid named after him actively piss off white Americans just by existing because he's an immigrant and he's doing it better than them. So like, imagine what effect they're having on the conservative base. It's just, side note, these people are my students. They're my colleagues. I teach science and technology writing to mostly ESL foreign students. So like, I'm just very humbly being like, I'm just helping you out with like your English writing, and everything else you do is just like, oh my God, mind blown. Like during the months of April and May, I coached multiple dissertation defense talks for like multiple Asian foreign women from like the population health sciences department, where they were like going around to these like developing countries in the global south and taking like hundreds of thousands of data points. And I would ask them like, oh, how many people do you have in this data set as you were trying to figure out how like you could improve healthcare in this type of country? And they'd just be like, oh, I have like 300,000 data points. I had to analyze it using the university cluster because trying to do it on my local machine would break it. So in summary, some of the people that the administration is barring from entering the country and that they have very specific reasons for doing so. We got white Europeans coming from leftist democracy states, at least compared to us. And even though they're white, they don't like them. Also, a lot of the people of color coming from abroad, like they're also coming from countries that are pulling far ahead of us, that, you know, like China, that we don't want to admit are pulling far ahead of us. And then we've got foreign money that's coming in, like these rich international students whose families are starting to have like an impact on the US universities and are like starting to set up programs in their home country and stuff. Foreign influence, that really scares the administration. And then finally, we got literal geniuses who just want to make contributions to our country, at least what I've seen in science and technology. We know that science in general scares the administration, but so does the idea that a foreigner could do anything better than a native-born white American. So yeah, banning them from coming in is probably making it easier for a lot of the conservative fan base to sleep at night, but it's definitely not making it easier for me. And it shouldn't. I mean, we're gonna fall so far behind globally. Like, we're gonna lose a whole generation of scientists and scholars. I don't like this.
This crackdown on Chinese students isn't happening in a vacuum. It's part of a larger narrative where immigration policies, economic insecurity, and geopolitical rivalry intersect. The Trump administration's hardline stance on immigration, from deportations to travel bans to border walls, has increasingly bled into academic and professional spaces. The demonization of China, especially during the trade war, has been extended to Chinese individuals. Students are now viewed not just as learners, but as potential spies, competitors, and threats. Yet ironically, many of these same Chinese students have chosen to stay in the US after graduation, starting businesses, joining the workforce, and contributing to industries like healthcare, tech, and finance. The United States has historically benefited from brain gain, attracting the best and brightest minds from around the world. By aggressively revoking visas and shutting the door on Chinese talent, America risks a brain drain of its own making. What happens when these students choose to go to Canada, the UK, or Australia instead? What happens when Chinese tech talent decides to build the next AI revolution in Shanghai instead of San Francisco? The ripple effects will be long-term and possibly irreversible. This has been a tough one to unpack, but I hope it gave you some clarity on just how deep and wide the implications of this visa crackdown really go. We're talking about young people's futures, billion-dollar industries, the integrity of higher education, and the future of global diplomacy, all tied into one controversial policy decision. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think this move will backfire on the US? Or is it a necessary step in protecting national interests? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you want more deep dives into global issues that really matter. Stay safe, stay curious. Adios, besties, yellow heart.